Hey guys, it's Jordan with TYT and TYT Politics coming to you from New York. Hope your day's going well. East Chicago, Indiana. East Chicago, Indiana, not Chicago, have to always say, has obviously been in the news. I've been there 3 or 4 times covering the lead poisoning. Arsenic was also found and other contaminants that have been found. It is an ongoing story that really hasn't gotten the attention it deserves. The revelations of lead contamination, arsenic contamination came out while Mike Pence was still the governor of Indiana. As I've reported over and over, Mike Pence didn't do a damn thing for East Chicago, Indiana. He did help out a white community with a lead contamination problem. He went there to Greentown, Indiana. Within 2 months, the problem was fixed. However, East Chicago, Indiana, which is predominantly Latino and African American, did not get the help from then Governor Mike Pence. Well, it came out yesterday that EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt, who has gotten a lot of criticism because he won't come out and say he believes in climate change. He has talked about essentially doing things to cut many EPA programs. He has been the environmentalist in the country and water protectors in the country, kind of a nightmare in the language. He has been bought off by the fossil fuel industry, which emails that were released after he was confirmed as EPA Administrator showed that he essentially was taking emails that were written by the fossil fuel industry for him and then passing them off as his own. So Scott Pruitt, who is the EPA Administrator, is now going to be visiting East Chicago, Indiana. So that's a good sign, I would say. He is supposed to be going down there on April 19th to talk to residents and public officials to get an up-close view of the damage there. If you don't know the story, East Chicago, Indiana is a kind of minority community. It was built up very much in the 1960s and 70s, and it was a very, very heavily industrialized city. One of several complexes there were built on top of a lead smelting plant. So you had basically children and residents living their daily lives, playing out in the dirt and all these things next to a lead plant. So what was found last year? In the soil in one of the complexes, lead levels were found 218 times the allowable limit for lead. At the time while I was there, I interviewed an EPA person, and he told me this is just a soil issue. There's no problem with the drinking water.
It's not similar to Flint. This is not a water pathway issue. They get Lake Michigan water. So there's no groundwater usage, so the water they're getting is not like from a well. They're looking at soil lead and kids playing in the dirt, getting it on their hands, putting their hands in their mouths, ingesting it, and then possible inhalation from any dust from that topsoil.
3 months later, they found lead in the drinking water. Only 43 homes in all of East Chicago have been tested. You hear me? 43 homes have been tested in East Chicago, Indiana, and this problem came out in July of last year. So obviously the EPA has not acted swiftly on this. The city has not acted. The state of Michigan has not acted. So credit where credit's due. Pruitt is doing the right thing and going down to East Chicago, Indiana. However, what will he be doing there? Is this a photo op? Just to say, hey, I went down, I talked to residents? Or are they actually going to do what needs to be done? Thorough home testing in all the homes. They need to test the home water heaters. As my reporting has showed you, I've gone into communities with water contamination expert Scott Smith. He tests the water in the home water heater, the shower water. He tests the water at the meter where water enters the home, whereas the EPA predominantly only has been testing the cold water out of the sink faucet and has not been testing shower water, the home water heater, and those things, which need to be tested. So here's the thing. Yesterday, the Indiana Senate voted 48-0 for continued assistance to East Chicago. A plan to indefinitely continued enhanced state assistance for lead-impacted areas of East Chicago was approved 48-0 Tuesday by the Indiana Senate. House Bill 1344 largely mirrors Governor Eric Holcomb's current East Chicago emergency declaration, by designating neighborhoods contaminated by past lead manufacturing operations as, quote, areas of special concern. If enacted into law, state agencies would be directed to continue working in those areas with their federal counterparts to relocate residents and remove or remediate soil tainted by lead or arsenic. So that all sounds good, but in speaking with sources on the ground, here's the thing. In that bill that was just passed, 48-0, they stripped out several things. They stripped out money for testing inside and outside the Superfund site. So the Superfund site is the designated area designated by the federal government that's tainted. So by lead and other contaminants. In this bill, they basically stripped out all money that could be allocated for the testing homes in the Superfund site, and residents and activists wanted testing outside of the Superfund site also. So basically, the state officials there said, oh, well, that's up to the EPA. It's on the EPA to allocate the funds. So money was taken out. Basically, the states took out resources out of their bill, and citing the EPA has to cover the costs. Residents have gotten no commitment on water filters to all residents in East Chicago, whether in the Superfund site or outside the Superfund site. In addition to the state bill, today there is a meeting going on. The national and state NAACP is holding a roundtable with public officials in East Chicago, Indiana. Here's the problem. There's one resident invited to this meeting. You know what that sounds like? Flint, Michigan, where public officials and people from the NAACP and other constituencies have met to talk about the crisis and to talk about how to respond, but have largely left out actual residents poisoned from the equation. Why should they be having meetings? I love the NAACP. Why is the NAACP and city officials having meetings, a round table to discuss the problem without the residents? Doesn't that seem kind of bizarre to you? It's insane. It would be, I don't even know the analogy, but you need the residents there first for accountability to see what is the NAACP and the city proposing they do. Secondly, to hear from the residents. How are they supposed to make decisions on a response, and who needs help and what actions need to be taken if they're not hearing from the directly impacted residents? So again, the NAACP having a meeting today in East Chicago, Indiana with public officials. They're having one resident attend the meeting and speak for it's bizarre. And this, if you talk to people in Flint, Michigan, which I have, this is what they have done in Flint for the last 3 years. Behind closed doors, public officials, the EPA, have met, gone over lab testing, gone over other things, gone over what resources to allocate this net without buy-in from the residents. So let me tell you something. In America, if citizens are poisoned through no fault of their own, they need to be at the front of the table, along with public officials and groups like the NAACP, not reading in news reports what is decided for them. Thank you, Dee Dee, for the kind words. Yeah, I agree. It reeks of corruption. If I'm poisoned or my kids are poisoned, I want transparency. I want to know what's being discussed in those meetings, and I want those public officials, as well as the NAACP, to hear my plight and my issues and how my life is being affected. So something doesn't smell right with private meetings being held by the NAACP and public officials with no residents. And some of the sources I have on the ground there might be crashing the party. So if we can get video of that, I will definitely get that up for you. But here's the broader thing. So this problem has been known. The problem with lead and other contamination in East Chicago, Indiana, has been known by the EPA and state officials for years. This is not something that just came out of the blue. They knew that this city, predominantly poor Latino and African American, was built on top of a lead smelting plant. They pretty much did nothing for quite some time. And then just last year, they finally thoroughly tested. So the citizens need to be at the front of the table. Secondly, this whole issue, it seems like there's a lot of deja vu going on with Flint. The answer in East Chicago is not temporary water filters. Well, filters for water, as I reported in my town hall in Flint last week, are not 100% effective either to stop lead or to stop other contaminants and bacteria.
Just like the lies that they say these freaking pure filters, these $20 filters, don't work. They weren't rated to filter this stuff right here, blood work, gadolinium. Come on, what is gadolinium? It's used in MRI machines. It causes cancer.
So just say dumping filters on the problem is not a solution. There needs to be thorough testing in all of the homes, including inside the Superfund site, but outside the Superfund site also. People need to know what they're dealing with, because right now people don't know, is my water safe to drink in East Chicago, Indiana? They don't know if certain areas in their home they should not be going. I've gone into a lot of these homes. Some of these basements, you can't breathe after 20 minutes because of the high lead levels and other contaminants in these basements. So action needs to be taken swiftly. Is it good that EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt is going down? Yes, I will give him credit. But we need more than a visit for a day. We need more than a photo op with the EPA Administrator. We need action, and quickly, because we cannot keep normalizing what happened in Flint, where citizens are poisoned and then government bureaucracy and public officials drag it out, don't respond, don't allocate the proper funds, while still giving huge tax breaks to multi-billionaire companies. While Mike Pence was governor here, he didn't go down to East Chicago, Indiana. He barely allocated any money to the city that was dealing with a lead poisoning issue. Like I said, he did act swiftly for a white community with the same problem. But meanwhile, he gave billions of dollars in tax breaks to big corporations and wealthy individuals. So the money is there to help these communities. And once you poison people, you, the government, needs to pay the bill, not the citizens. And a lot of these citizens have been paying out of pocket for moving expenses, for water bottles and things like that, and for medical costs that were brought on by the contamination. So I'm going to keep reporting on this. But again, Scott Pruitt will be visiting April 19th. We will report on that. Today, actually, Scott Smith, who's a friend of the Young Turks, I've gone into East Chicago and done water testing with him. He's a water contamination expert. He is actually speaking in front of the EPA at a conference in Minnesota. So we'll have footage from that. It's funny because they were attacking Scott Smith for a very long time, basically trying to discredit his work. I saw emails where they were trying to discredit his work, kind of calling him a junk scientist. They tried to discredit him to me, and now suddenly they're inviting him to speak at a conference. So it seems that he was not a quack scientist, and his methods are reputable and worthy of peer review and things like that. So I'll have more on his speech as well. Thank you for watching. Please share this video. Watch the link below, which has the other videos from our Indiana lead poisoning reports. I'll be going live on TYT Politics YouTube a little bit later on something different. Thanks, guys.